Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. This is going to be an Act 2 summary of Macbeth. So if you haven't watched Act 1, I'm just going to put a link to it up here. Click on that. I would suggest probably watching Act 1 first. Unless you were really confident with Act 1 and you're specifically looking for advice on Act 2, then you're in the right place. But if you want to get a complete look through all of the acts of Macbeth, then Act 1 is up there. But I'm going to run through Act 2 now. So, we finished off at the end of Act 1 with Macbeth being manipulated by Lady Macbeth in Act 1, Scene 7, where she basically convinces Macbeth that he really should kill the king. So that's where we left off. It's determined again that they're going to be killing the king. So we start off with a scene between Macbeth, Fleance, and Banquo. Fleance being the son of Banquo. And think about that prophecy that Macbeth witnessed Banquo receiving. Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. Meaning, you will not be king, but your children will be kings. Fleance being Banquo's son. Therefore, if the witch's prophecy is going to be true, which Macbeth obviously believes that they are, then Fleance is going to be king, and that is not going to make Macbeth happy. So it starts off with a scene with those three. Banquo admits that he's thinking a lot about the witches. Macbeth dismisses the witches. He says, I think not of them, which I bet is an absolute lie. I bet all that Macbeth can think about is the witches and the prophecy that they've given him. I just think he's trying to cover it up and trying to be like, don't worry about the witches, because obviously he's about to kill the king. So Macbeth is really trying to just like move Banquo away from any suspicion. Banquo and Fleance leave, and this is kind of a weird moment here. Macbeth sees a dagger floating in front of him, which he recognizes is a hallucination, because he tries to grab it and he basically says, I don't have it in my hand. And he also works out, he's quite smart in a way, because he works out why he is perhaps hallucinating a dagger. He describes his sort of mental state as the heat-oppressed brain. Heat meaning he's very stressed. His brain is overworking, producing a lot of heat. Kind of interesting. Nice metaphor there. He admits that he is struggling to sleep. He says nature seems dead and wicked dreams abuse the curtain's sleep. Now, here is something that not a lot of teachers pick up on, in my experience, talking to students at different schools who are quite surprised when I talk about the really important idea or theme of sleep, or the lack of sleep. There are multiple references throughout the play where Macbeth keeps talking about the fact that he cannot sleep. Lady Macbeth, even after Macbeth sees the ghost of Banquo, Lady Macbeth says to Macbeth, look, you need to sleep. You lack like nature's goodness, which is sleep. And right from the moment that he kills Duncan, Macbeth references that he cannot sleep. And I think the reason for that is because he murders Duncan while he is in his sleep, so he can't defend himself. And Macbeth can't get over the guilt of that. And so one of the reasons I think why he's never able to sleep again. And think about it, like I think the play spans something like a year. The guy doesn't sleep for a year, or at least doesn't sleep very well for a year. I mean, think about what that's going to do to your mind, which might explain his very like tyrannical side. Just an idea. But the idea of sleep and the lack of sleep is a really, really interesting theme to talk about in the play, if it suits your question that you get on it. He fully commits to killing Duncan. After he sees this Duncan, he's like, right, boom, we're going to do this. Whilst I threat, he lives. Words to the heat of deeds, too cold breath gives. Ending with a rhyming couplet there. It's kind of interesting. Lives and gives, meaning a rhyming couplet. And Shakespeare, a lot at the end of his soliloquies or monologues, he does have characters finish in a rhyming couplet. It kind of adds a really nice sort of like, almost like a little, I don't know, like a little ding on it, like ding, Like, yeah, nailed it. Like, I don't know, it's just kind of, it's nice. You got to think, why would you end on a rhyming couplet? I think because it gives quite a lot of power to the speech that they've had, and it just ends on a very powerful note, because rhyming couplets, having those two words rhyme at the end, just gives it a little bit of weight, a little bit of power. Scene 2. Macbeth kills Duncan and is immediately very, very unsettled. He thinks he hears a voice saying, "Macbeth shall sleep no more." He says, "Cawdor hath murdered sleep, so Cawdor shall sleep no more. Macbeth shall sleep no more." So this kind of ties into what I was just saying about this lack of sleep. Macbeth believes that he has heard someone saying, "You will no longer sleep." It's kind of really haunting and eerie and freaky. Maybe it's the witches. Who knows? He feels guilty, immediately saying, "Will all great Neptunes not wash this blood clean from my hands?" Great bit of sort of metaphor or hyperbole there, that, no amount of water can clean this, what is holy blood almost, because of the divine right of kings, the fact that the king is chosen by God. He will never be able to clean his hands of Duncan's blood, because he's committed regicide. He's killed the king. He references that he could not say amen. So basically the guards outside of Duncan's chamber are praying, and Macbeth says to Lady Macbeth, "I heard them praying and I wanted to say amen when they said amen, but it stuck in my throat." Basically, I think a good way of analysing that is Macbeth is no longer able to connect with God, because, back then, and now to some degree, they would have believed that prayer was a way of speaking directly to God. And if Macbeth cannot pray, i.e. cannot say amen, he's lost that connection to God. He's no longer able to communicate with him. Why? Because of course he's just killed God's representative on earth, i.e. the king in those days. So it's quite an important moment there, because it obviously pushes Macbeth more towards evil, more towards the devil. And think back to what Lady Macbeth said in Act 1. "Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it." Serpent, devil. Macbeth no longer can pray to God because he is the devil. All ties up. Macbeth forgets to leave the daggers behind, and he refuses to go back. Lady Macbeth is actually like, why have you got the daggers? The plan was you were supposed to leave the daggers. You were supposed to plant them on the guards so that we can blame it on them. And Macbeth says, "I dare not go back. I will not go back." So Lady Macbeth kind of insults him and says, "Infirm of purpose, give me the daggers then. I'll plant them on the guards, for it must seem their guilt," she says. And then when she comes back, she says, "My hands are of your colour now, but I shame to wear a heart so white." Fantastic quote, definitely one to put in your list to learn, because you've got the reference to blood on the hands. Wear a heart would be a metaphor, because you don't wear a heart, you just have a heart. And white meaning scared. So, as in, like, when you're scared and people might say, "God, you look like a ghost. You look white, like you've seen a ghost." So basically saying, like, your heart is weak and scared. Mine is not. I shame to wear a heart so white. And of course that makes sense, because again, going back to Act 1, Scene 5, when Lady Macbeth says, "Stop up the passage and access to remorse," when she says that to the spirits, she basically is saying, "Don't allow me to feel any guilt." And it's kind of working for her right now. She's just basically like involved herself in regicide, the murder of the king. She's planted the daggers. She's involved, and yet she feels absolutely no guilt. So obviously what she said to the spirits, the supernatural, obviously worked for her. Or she's just evil, which she is. Scene 3. Right, okay, at the beginning of Scene 3, notice you might have looked at the porter at the beginning of this scene. I've not even put him in the summary, because you would never write about him in your exam. There's nothing really to say about the porter. There's no way you're going to get a question on the porter, because the porter is a bit of light-hearted relief. He just tells jokes, really, because people have just witnessed the king being like murdered. People are going to be like freaked out in the audience. And so The porter is just a little bit of like light relief. So I'm not going to say anything about him. Just to explain why you might be like, hey, Nick, you've missed out the porter. Not important, not relevant. I'm only going over the important stuff. So Macduff, first time we kind of see Macduff, finds Duncan's body and says, "Oh, horror, horror, horror." That's a fairly worthwhile quote. You've got the repetition of horror, adding power and weight to those words. Also helps to show Macduff as being really loyal to the king, which is going to be really important later on, because obviously Macduff is going to try and avenge the death of Duncan as well as his family, and obviously kill Macbeth. So kind of quite a useful quote there. All the characters enter and they're all super upset that Duncan's been killed. Of course they are, because Duncan, like Shakespeare, deliberately made Duncan out to be a wonderful king all the way through Act 1. So of course everyone's going to be upset about him being killed. Lady Macbeth, classic Lady Macbeth. Everyone sort of starts questioning, like, "Oh God, what's happened? What are we going to do?" Lady Macbeth just pretends to faint. And they say, "Look to the lady." So, yeah, classic bit of distraction from Lady Macbeth. Oh, it couldn't be Lady Macbeth because she fainted. Very smart from Lady Macbeth. Macbeth says he saw the guards covered in blood, immediately trying to blame them. He's like, "Oh, it must have been the guards because, I mean, they were covered in blood. Couldn't be anyone else, right?" Macbeth tells everyone to get dressed and meet in the hall together. Now, this is quite important because remember, Duncan's been killed in Macbeth's castle. So Macbeth kind of has the authority, you know, it's his castle. He has the authority to talk to people. And in a way, it's quite useful for Macbeth because he's now able to almost take on this authoritative role. He's like, "Right, guys, we're going to sort this out. Everyone get dressed," because it's like the middle of the night or the early morning. "Come down to the hall when you're ready and we'll discuss it." And I bet you, if they were to sit round a table, Macbeth at that meeting would make sure he was at the head of the table. And actually, to be fair, it's his right to, because it's his castle. So it's quite clever that Macbeth has chosen his castle as the place to kill Duncan. Also, a bit unfortunate that Duncan invited himself to Macbeth's castle in the middle of Act 1. Malcolm and Donalbain, right, remember from Act 1, Malcolm has just been named the Prince of Cumberland, which means he is the heir to Duncan. So actually, in theory, what should happen right now is Malcolm should be named king. That is what should happen in the law of the land, because he was the heir to the throne. Who is Donalbain? Donalbain is the other son of Duncan. So you've got two brothers, Malcolm and Donalbain. The reason I sort of smile and laugh there is because Donalbain is so irrelevant. He is in like 2 or 3 scenes, and this is the only scene he speaks in, and we never see him again after this. So he's just super irrelevant. But it's kind of nice for Malcolm to have a brother. So everyone leaves to go get dressed to then meet in the hall together. And Malcolm and Donalbain are left at the very end of this scene, and they have a discussion about what they're going to do. And they're both freaked out and they don't trust anyone. Malcolm has a great line where he says that there are daggers in men's smiles. Might be Donalbain, actually. I can't remember. Check that out. But anyway, daggers in men's smiles is a great quote to use because you've got that great metaphor and the use of the word daggers and smiles, the juxtaposition between that. Dagger being an instrument of death and a smile being a way of like being nice to someone. Really, really clever quote. Great to analyse there. Malcolm decides that he's going to go to England, run away to England, and Donalbain is going to run away to Ireland for safety. Because basically they're saying, we can't trust anyone here in Scotland now. We've got to get out of here. We've got to leave. And they leave the country. Now that actually plays massively into Macbeth's hands. Because Malcolm's supposed to be heir to the throne. And, well, he's just gone off to England, our enemy. Scotland and England will be enemies at this time. So, yeah, he's basically just left. Well, if he's left, who's going to be king? And Macbeth is sort of like, well, I should be king then. I'm probably good to be king. I'm the Thane of Glamis. I'm the Thane of Cawdor. You know, I'm a great warrior. Everyone knows I'm a great warrior. I'll be king then. Malcolm obviously doesn't want it. And in fact, later on in the play, Macbeth says Malcolm probably did it then. He probably killed the king. He killed his dad because, well, he ran away. Quite clever of Macbeth. Some real, like, misinformation going on. Some quite modern themes. Scene 4, final scene of this act. And it's a very, very short one. It basically just gets everyone up to speed with what is going on and what's happened off stage. So we learn that Macbeth had Duncan's guards executed. And interestingly, in this moment, the characters that are speaking saying, so we'll never know if they did it. Because Macbeth just got rid of them. So it's not like you can even interrogate them and be like, did you hear anything? Was it you guys? If it wasn't you, who was it? Did you see anything? Did you hear anything? They can't even do that. They're dead. So Macbeth is basically like, right, we've done enough to put guilt on them. They were covered in blood. I told everyone they were covered in blood. Now let's kill them before they can say anything otherwise, or try and like muddy the picture, basically. Just get rid of them. As Donalbain and Malcolm have fled, the crown goes to Macbeth. We never actually see Macbeth be given the crown. This is what this scene is for. Basically, it's a way of Shakespeare not having to write every single moment of what happens. He basically has these tiny little scenes where he just says, oh, and this happened, oh, and this happened, and this happened. So they're not the most important or interesting scenes to actually analyze, which is why when we get to them, you'll see they're super short. I literally just have 1 or 2 things to say about them because they're just summaries for people who need a summary when they're in the middle of the play. And there you go. That is Act 2. So major moments here. We get the death of a king, and I cannot I can't overstate how important that is for people at the time. People believed that the king was chosen by God. So the fact that a king has been murdered is absolutely, devastating to people. And so the fact that Macbeth has done this immediately is going to make people hate Macbeth. So by the end of Act 2, we are absolutely, hating Macbeth, whereas at the beginning of Act 1, we love Macbeth. So structurally from Shakespeare, really interesting to have that great juxtaposition between our feelings, the way we view Macbeth at different parts of the story. There's some context that I'm definitely going to want to talk about in terms of killing the king, the fact that it's 1606. We had the gunpowder plot a year before, which was the plot to kill King James, the King of England and Scotland at that time. I'm going to do a whole separate video on that once I've done these 5 acts. So I'm just going to leave all the context to a completely separate video. So if you do need to check that video out now for whatever reason, you will find it in the playlist on the channel, which will be labeled Macbeth. All the Macbeth stuff you need to know. And that's it, guys. Act 2 is done. On the screen now is going to be a link to Act 1 if you missed it, and also a link to Act 3 so that you can click on it and go straight to it. If you did find something useful in the video, please do subscribe to the channel. If you aren't already subscribed, please leave a like on the video as well. Leave a comment if you've got any questions, and I'll see you in the next one.